the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Let's begin it.
Number ZZ9 plural Z alpha. Number ZZ9. I've never seen such idiots in all my life.
Listen to all this,
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with Buddy.
But the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you want to know what they have to say.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 314. What dictionary definition? I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with nonsense annihilator Lauren Brooks and the personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson, and tonight we're going to answer the accusation that we're misrepresenting the suffragettes. Because the dictionary definition tells us everything we need to know about feminism. But before we get into it, we gotta do what we gotta do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and we got a smorgasbord of little bits and pieces tonight to go with that. And as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice. And for the sound people, I'm really sorry about the plosives, but I actually lost my pop filter and haven't had... The new ones haven't arrived yet. So that's what I get for traveling with my headphones. In any case, we are definitely financially treading on thin ice with Patreon because all of these financial organizations are under pressure to silence people like us, and we've seen that before with other people, so it would not surprise us to have that disappear on us one day. But in the meantime, in light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. Which I think you can do now, actually, because it looks like the technical difficulties with the blog are technically over. So I'm a happy girl today. I actually got to do a blog post. So hopefully I'm not talking out of my ass on that either, because if I am, my headset's really going to stink in the morning and I still got to use it. But with that, we can get on with what I've got up on the screen. As you can see, I have the dictionary definition. I believe this one is dictionary.com, because this is the one people send me to all the time. A dictionary definition. Yes, and that's the that is the key right there. A dictionary definition. This is the one that equity feminists really like to give everybody. They'll send you pictures of this, they'll send you copies of it, where it says that feminism is the advocacy of women's rights on the basis of the equality of the sexes. And that's all it says. It doesn't say anything else, which isn't the classic definition of feminism, and it's definitely not the pre-politic definition of feminism, because before the definition of feminism was political, it was synonymous with femininity. So if you described a woman's feminism, you were describing her feminine characteristics, not her political outlook. And it was, God, I can't think of his name, a socialist who organized some communes.
Guy?
Yeah, the French guy. I can't think of his name. God, that's horrible.
Is it Charles Fourier?
Fourier, yes, Fourier. Sorry. But yeah, it was Charles Fourier who coined the use of the term feminism to describe the political advocacy, but not as this definition describes it. So we have, if you Google search this, because I get told all the time to Google it. So dictionary.com says that, right? But if you scroll down to Britannica, Britannica says feminism, the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. It has to be real specific there. Although largely originating in the West, feminism is manifested worldwide, ... and then it has a whole article. Merriam-Webster says, the meaning of feminism is belief and advocacy of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, expressed especially through, and I'm sure it's activism and stuff like that. Of course,
none of them have had the two definitions. That's what Merriam-Webster had last time I saw it. It had an A definition and a B definition.
Yeah.
A was it's all about equality. B is it's all about women.
Yep.
I found it helpful to delineate those two things. The thing they say it is, and the thing the Mott and the Bailey. You know.
Oh yeah. And it is. There is a Mott and a Bailey there. Then you have Wikipedia talks about it as a range of social, political movements and ideologies that aim to define and establish the political, economic, personal, and social equality of, obviously, the sexes. And as you get into different organizations, now we have the International Women's Development Agency, which anybody tries to drop me in developing acid, I am going to knock you out. That's not okay. Okay, that's bad for your skin. But and also I don't even have any fixing agent, so but says that feminism is about all genders. So I guess they mean all 72 or 144 or 28 or 3 or whatever number is correct today.
It doesn't matter what you invent tomorrow. It could very well be non-sexual, and they go, well, we're about all genders.
Yeah.
There's no cap on that. There's no cap on 72. or 720. So any gender you can think of, and feminism is behind it, except male, obviously.
Yeah. All right, that's it. I'm going to start identifying as a butt crack. And you have to address me with a straight face while picturing that for the rest of your life. Till I change my mind, which might be 5 minutes from now because I am a woman. And we do that. But, yeah, all equal rights and opportunities. And then they go into the whole diversity, women's experiences, identities, women's knowledge. You know, the whole women's ways of knowing, which apparently don't include logic, reason, and facts. Cambridge Dictionary calls feminism a belief. It's a belief that women should be allowed the same rights, power, and opportunities as men and be treated the same way. I don't think they would like it if they were treated the same way. I don't think I would like it if I was treated. I don't like it when I get treated like a man. Sometimes I do get treated like a man. And I don't like it.
I don't know anyone who's been misgendered more than you, especially like Chris.
It's fun on Twitter.
Don't even seem to understand that Hannah is a woman's name.
No, they don't.
If woman's defending men, it must be a man. Wait, what? And they never got in trouble for misgendering, even during Twitter 1.0.
Yeah, no, the guy that was trying to get me banned did it quite a bit, right? He misgendered me over and over again, and didn't get banned. But he finally called one of my followers a racial slur. That did it. So there you go. He was trying to get away with it by saying, "But I put the word house in front of it." Yeah. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. Oh.
All sorts of epithets flying through my head right now, that none of which I can say. You can sound them all out in your own head, and you'll see how funny they're.
This is, by the way, the same guy that got triggered by bread. So, just for the record. And if you don't know that story, ask me about it on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But, yeah, back to these definitions. You've noticed that, like, none of them are exactly the same, right? We get down to Eastern Kentucky University. So this will be a gender studies course, women in gender studies. Says, feminism is an interdisciplinary approach to issues of equality and equity based on gender, gender expression, gender identity, sex, and sexuality as blah, 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 blah. So we're getting into feminism doesn't have a definition, right? It doesn't have a definition. It looks like it has a different definition for everybody that tries to tell you what it is. Right? A feminist is a person who believes that the subordination of women is not only unfair but immoral, the New York Times says. We have another Britannica entry here, which is kind of weird. Right? Human rights careers. At its core, feminism has a core now. So, I imagine its core is really out of shape. Feminism is the belief that women deserve equal social, economical, and political rights and freedoms. And then it goes on to talk about what feminism has done. Even though feminism really hasn't done anything because everything women have was handed to us by men. So there we go. So we have that, right? Get told, look it up, Google it, read the dictionary. Okay. Which one?
Not one of the definitions gave a notation and pointed you in the direction of the verb to feminize.
Right.
And that's what perfect way of delineating all of these various definitions and just saying it's the state of having been feminized.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing...
It's kind of what it all comes down to. It explains what was going on 100 years ago. It explains what's going on now.
Today, yeah.
Everyone's getting feminized.
And it's not really a good thing. It's not healthy femininity. It's toxic femininity, right? It's the selfish, indulgent, entitled, angry, demanding kind. And that's not the only qualities that women are capable of exhibiting. Like, yes, we can do that. We all have that capability. But when we grow up, we're supposed to learn to control that shit. Just like men are supposed to learn to control that shit. Only we don't get held to the same standards they do. And so very many women don't, right? And that's not new either. And I will point out, all these definitions seem to be trying to get the idea across that feminism is about seeking equality that women don't have, which I consider to be bullshit, because you can't name me a single law that takes anything away from women that men have under that law, right? No rights that...
Their children?
Yeah. Well, men don't have their children, right? So... But, yeah, so there's not a law that prevents women from exercising any rights that men are allowed to exercise under the law. So there is that, right? So if you look at the suffragettes, because that's who we're accused of misrepresenting, it's the suffragettes, what did their behavior tell us about their ideas about equality? Like, we just got done reading an article that indicated that American suffragettes and early American feminists thought that women were superior and men needed to work with women because we're supposed to be partners. But women are superior, and that's pretty much the sandwich that she made. At least she did make a sandwich, but. I don't know. Let's take a look at the first article that I have here. And I'm not going to read from this because the layout is very inconvenient. But you can see this is a real article. This isn't... I haven't... I'm going to go to a blog, but I haven't gone to a blog that made this up out of whole cloth. This is real. Alright, so the blog is called Unknown Misandry. And the for anybody that actually wants to visit, it's a Blogspot blog. It's unknownmisandry.blogspot, I believe it's .com. Yeah, .blogspot.com. And it's all one word, unknown misandry. And then the .blogspot.com. But this is the same article. Man is a mere imposter and woman is supreme, says ultra-feminist head.
Yeah. That's an insult we should all start using.
Yeah.
You're not just a feminist head, you're an ultra-feminist head.
Yeah. I guess the rest of her body doesn't talk. This woman's name is Marie Petty. It's not a description, it's her actual name, from the British Isles. And this article is from the Pittsburgh Press, May 7th, 1922. So the same year as the one that we read last week and the week before. So, like I said, if we're misrepresenting, this should clear the air, right? Already it looks like we're not. What she had to say, and he actually found another article, so there's a second one that I might look through too as we go through this. But the first one is, she says, man is but one of a million humble fertilizers. Nature intended women to reign supreme. And that's why women invented toilets, right? To make society grateful for things like not having to walk past poop on the sidewalk.
Toilets are misogyny.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of how, but I don't have to. This is feminism.
Well, they're celebrated on the same day that we celebrate men.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's totally women who built all of civilization, and discovered. I can't really say anybody invented mathematics because it's just the language for how we describe quantities. So they discovered how to do that, but yeah, no men were involved, right? in the history of discovering how to describe quantities and how they work together and stuff. Right? Oh, wait. Such supremacy. NobaFan21, I'm sorry, I missed it, gave us $1 and said, I think we should address criticism of feminism as criticism toward women's rights to help further expose how gynocentric people are who claim to be anti-feminist. Oh, yeah, there we go. A lot of the stuff that feminists fight for, though, I don't consider it to be rights. Right. In particular, a lot of the demands they have for access to things require other people's labor to be done for them free. You don't have a right to that. That's called slavery. Or they're taking money from other people to pay for those services, which is called theft, also known as taxation. So I don't think those are rights. So I guess I would be on board with saying it's criticism toward women's rights, because the concept of women's rights has been bastardized. Anyway, we'll go on here with the article. Marie Petty, leader of a secret ultra-feminist movement. A secret ultra-feminist movement that... what newspaper was this again? Oh, the Pittsburgh Press wrote about. Because that's a good way to keep a secret.
Can women keep secrets?
Well, you know, there's ever speedy different ways of communication, right? We had telephone, we had television, we tell a woman. I can't even remember whose joke that originally was. It was definitely not originally mine. I heard that from somebody actually up on a stage with a microphone on television. Just cannot remember who. So sorry for not giving credit exactly, but at least I didn't steal it.
There's nothing original under the sun. It's your joke now.
There we go. But an ultra-feminist movement that has sprung up throughout the British Isles today voiced this slogan of the new organization. I guess it's still secret in Britain as it's being published in the United States, right? Although still clandestine, the organization is reported to have gained tremendously in membership and influence since first it was promulgated a month ago. It aims to restore womankind to its, quote, rightful place. Which, again, doesn't really say anything about where that is. Miss Petty was asked by the United States to state the beliefs on which her movement is based. So here we go.
It's cringe. Someone has to say it.
It's very much not based. Modern man, she replied, in his pose of superiority, is but a mere contemptible impostor who must be subdued. Women's superiority has been scientifically established. So I'm wondering how she thinks that women were going to subdue men after being oppressed for all that time.
Using the science, of course.
Mm-hmm. At the beginning of organic life, woman created man. So apparently women are God now. And ruled him. He was a parasite and a slave. At best, man is but an afterthought of nature. Sounds like it's all about equality, doesn't it? At secret meetings of the new movement, a charter based on data from the days before women fell is being drawn up, Miss Petty declared. She said at these meetings, any mention of the word man or anything masculine was hissed. They sound very mature, too. I'll bet they're all over 30 in these meetings. Then the next one. Mere man is about to be swept off the face of the earth if ultra-feminists have their way. Elliot O'Donnell, author and investigator of Distinction, informs the International News Service. Oh, well, they're now they're not a secret organization anymore. They're known internationally. The tenets of the ultra-feminists who are organized to unthrone men are, according to O'Donnell, as follows. In the beginning, there was only one sex, the feminine. Man was a mistake, a mere afterthought. There is, yeah.
That's not true. There was one sex and it was called asexual, hence the name. I'm pretty sure females and males were created at the same time, because female necessarily means counterpoint to male.
Mm-hmm.
Females have always been the ones who gestate the young, just like the amoebas that they apparently should be worshipping. So men and women are an afterthought in nature. She's right about that. It was nothing but asexual reproduction for a couple billion years,
Mm-hmm.
and then us lowly, whatever the word is. My microbiology is falling out of my brain at this point.
Yeah, it's a bit interesting. Well, I mean, considering what I've been reading lately, we might just be meat mechs for bacteria, so there's that. But it's a theory.
If I got here first, therefore I should rule over this, is how we're going, then we really should hand the planet over to the animals, who should in turn hand it over to the plants, who should in turn hand it over to the mushrooms, and the mushrooms will rule the world, because they can't even remember anything.
Well, humanity is all going to die of an incurable yeast infection anyway, thanks to COVID. But in any case, yeah. So yeah, she says man was a mistake. There is no need for any sex other than the feminine. Love between the sexes is only weakness, temporary madness. Life begins as female, life is feminine, and parthenogenesis, or virgin birth, proves the oneness at the substance out of which all things are made. I don't think she understands exactly how the virgin birth was supposed to have occurred. The reason it was virgin birth was because there was no sex involved in the creation. The baby was implanted. Like, that was supposed to be a miracle, not a osmosis reproduction. Albatross gives us $2 and says Miss Petty is a very fitting name. And NobuFan21 gives us $1 and says, I've heard people say during gestation everyone starts off as girls. That's not the when they think it is, because that means boys are the only gender that's special while girls are ordinary. It's also not really right. Everybody starts out with their genitalia unformed, and it all looks the same as it's forming, and then you form your sex much later in gestation than you form the fact that there's a split and you have two legs.
Right, but the genes are there.
Right.
Conception, like, that's...
Yeah.
There's no, we were all just females, and poof, magically a penis popped out. That's not how it...
Well, I mean, you develop actual humanity when you go through the magic vagina, so apparently you could maybe develop a gender in the magic uterus or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, fetuses start off, embryos before they look like humans look kind of reptilian, before that they look amphibian, before that they look kind of fishy. You can trace our evolution oddly closely by the changing morphology of a blastocyst to an embryo. But again, doesn't that mean men are more evolved than female on the scale she's presenting? She's saying females came first, and males came second. Well, things evolve into tend to be somewhat more complex, at least in the brain region.
Yeah.
So, bit of a shot in the foot, or just a random shot in the air, which could land anywhere, and may land in our own eye, as it should.
Yeah, this seems to be a thing with, and I've caught myself doing this too. When we get mad, we shut off part of our brain and we say stupid shit. But so some of us are worse about it than others. Like if I get mad enough, and I get past the point of stupid, then I get really mean, and it's embarrassing later. So there's also that. So she then writes, this one's another one, Marie Petty, leader of a secret ultra-feminist movement that has sprung up throughout the British Isles, today voiced this slogan of the new organization. A feminine war against the male sex is well underway to Great Britain, according to Elliot O'Donnell. Again, this guy actually had quite a bit under his belt. Elliot O'Donnell, who is the author of more than 30 books on psychic matters, which this isn't psychic as in New Age bullshit. It's psychic was used to mean matters of the mind back then as well. So thoughts, beliefs, philosophies, ideas, blah blah blah. But nope, this is psychic the other way. Established her reputation as an investigator, run as an investigator of haunted houses. Is Irish by birth, but in reality an American product. For his family, settled in Baltimore more than a century ago. And that's probably supposed to be he spent the early days of his youth on a ranch in Oregon, not Ho. But sometimes in old newspapers, the way that the typeface is made, that would, if you used a program to read it and create a type for it, it will give you the wrong letter because it's really weird and hard to read. For many years, O'Donnell has been looked upon as one of the leaders of those who are trying to lay the truth about things supernatural before the public. His adventure in investigating ghost stories and haunted places are widely read in England, but now he has given up his investigations of things supernatural to take up the investigation of the efforts of certain ultra-feminists to bring about the downfall of man. Probably because that's even more far out than the spiritualist movement was.
He's chasing a different type of boogeyman.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because at that point in time, like the spiritualist movement was, if I remember reading about it right, was in full swing. People were having seances. Like in the 70s, it was Tupperware parties. In the 20s, it was talking to dead people. I don't know what happened. People got really morbid. But in any case, yeah. So I guess the feminists were weirder than the dead people. This English investigator informed the International News Service that he is in possession of absolute evidence that ultra-feminists are laying plans for a sex war in England, and he has no doubt that their organization extends to the United States. I am not making a hostile attack on women, O'Donnell said. For women, as women, I have always had the greatest respect and admiration. See, that goes all the way back to the early 20th century, right? They always have to do this. I'm not attacking women. I love women. I think women are wonderful. But these guys are assholes. These women are assholes. You shouldn't have to say, not all women. If you're talking about bad behavior, women who are not involved in it, women who are not doing it, shouldn't feel targeted. Shouldn't take it personally. I've always held, he says, that it is only fair and right that women should enjoy the same privileges and advantages as men. So he's not even anti-feminist. He just doesn't like those feminists. These are early radfems. I am convinced, however, from my investigation that the cult of man-hating is being fostered by very definite organization in London. Secret meetings from which men are rigidly banned are being held repeatedly, and the doctrine of male hatred is subtly but vigorously propunded. Again, this is feminism. I don't know how it fits the definition if they're supremacist. The chief aims and objects of the movement are in the field of politics and economics. The ultra-feminists are particularly anxious to gain control over the police. So I'm going to read that part again. The ultra-feminists are particularly anxious to gain control over the police. So that's 1922, right? And they fought for about 3/4 of a century to gain control over the police. And they used domestic violence law, and they used sexual violence law, and lobbied for changes in custody, and lobbied for changes in the rights of women in divorce, right? But domestic violence law and sexual violence law gave them a way to basically get feminist training in to police academies and to all of the education that you have to obtain to work in the court system, including the education you have to obtain to be a judge. And over the years, you had different state laws that were passed, and eventually federal laws. And in 1984, they got the Family Violence Victims Services. Let's see, it's Victims FVP SA. I have to remember now. It's been a while since I've actually looked at it, but it's Family Violence Victims Services and Prevention Act, or Prevention and Victim Services Act. And I can't remember which order that was in, of 1984 passed. And it created shelters. It created a 24-hour hotline. It funded it with government money, which means tax money that was taken from men, because mostly men that pay taxes. And from there, they got mandatory arrest policies. And then they got, but the mandatory arrest policies have to be gendered, because if they're not, you get an 800% increase in the arrests of women for perpetration of domestic violence. And then they got the Violence Against Women Act, which gendered all of it. They changed the definition of rape to expand it in a variety of ways, and remove recognition of women's agency under a variety of circumstances, right? And today, police receive essentially DEI training that is mostly about serving women. And today, the law kind of dictates what they have to do when they respond to a call for domestic violence or sexual violence. And if there's a sort of a conflict of stories between a man and a woman, they're obligated to believe the woman. So here we have, it's 100 years later, and definitely feminists have control over the police. Even though they're the ones also saying defund the police. But they did gain control over the police.
And I think the word for that is insurrection, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of. If you do it slowly and subversively enough. It doesn't count as an insurrection. Unlike some things that do.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm talking about what it's like in the United States. In the UK, it's illegal to be a misogynist.
Basically.
And it's illegal to be accused of misogyny. It's even illegal to be accused of giving a woman the ick. Right? If she thinks you might be a creep, then you're a misogynist for making her think that, and you can get arrested. If you say something online that she doesn't like, you can get arrested. Feminists did get control over the police, so that they succeeded in that plan.
But hey, if you do get arrested, you can pretend to be a woman, and then you get put in a woman's prison.
Mm-hmm.
So women are oppressed. Do you see?
Yep. So this goes on. In the past history of the human race, sex hate and antagonisms have been the prelude to great national catastrophes. Oh, I missed a line. If the cult of man-hating goes on increasing until it gains ascendancy, even were it possible to propagate the race without the assistance of the male, the end of the world would be assured. And he's right about that, too, because as the family deteriorates, the quality of behavior that we get out of people who are deemed adults deteriorates. The workforce deteriorates. The culture becomes lawless, and you end up in an unlivable situation, and it will collapse. But yeah, in the past history, he says that I venture to suggest that this nation would take heed lest a like fate befall it. There's nothing constructive in ultra-feminism. It is destructive from start to finish. O'Donnell declared there are three types as follows. The type that apes the masculine. So basically butch feminists. And then 2, the anemic, fretful type of woman, which is pretty much the majority of feminists today. The ones that, like, freak out if they're walking down the street and there's also a man walking down the street somewhere in their vicinity. Because if he's also walking down the street, he must be doing it because they're walking down the street. No man has ever walked down the street for any other reason than because there was a woman there that he wanted to follow. Right? Those are those women, right? And then he says 3, the patently abnormal women. Those women tell us who they are today by dyeing their hair various shades of blue and green.
Mm-hmm.
Which, ironically, is kind of normal.
Yeah. They all look like they're trying to emulate peacocks. Badly. And there's more to this. Like, this keeps going. Dissemination of the cult of the ultra-feminists is being accomplished by propaganda, O'Donnell charges. And then there is another image of another article. London ultra-feminists seeking to sweep men from the earth. And you can see in this one has not been translated to text, but it's also not a great print, so I don't know if it could have been easily. Mere man is about to be swept off the face of the earth if ultra-feminists have their way. Elliot O'Donnell, author and investigator of yeah, those letters are terrible. I think that's it. Yeah, distinction. I don't know if that's an E or a G. It's probably distinction. But in form of international news service, the tenets of the ultra-feminists who are organized to unthrone men are, according to O'Donnell, as follows. And then it gives those tenets again. So there's the image from that article. But yeah, this is basically the genesis in at least the UK of what is today known as radical feminism. But radical feminism is the origin of modern feminism. So feminists who claim that this kind of thing is not what feminism is about, their movement came from this. It's not a different thing that went a different path. It is the start of the path that led to them. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 314, honey for the badgers, super chows are always better than super chats. That is true. So having looked at this, alright, we can see that there was definitely female supremacy in early feminism. It's not just a one-off that one feminist did that. There's a whole organization in the UK, a whole secret organization influencing feminists in the UK in 1922, doing the same thing. So we'll look at... This article is a little more frivolous. This is from 2014, by the way, so it's not a new article, but it's about very old feminists, so it doesn't have to be new, because the quotes aren't going to change. This site is called The Toast, and it's not quite down to the level of BuzzFeed, but it can be sometimes, but it's often better than that. But the article is Suffragettes Who Sucked White Supremacy and Women's Rights. Well, that sounds totally like equality, don't you think? So what they've got is different quotes, and it's basically like the good, or the person, the good, and then the uh-oh. Suffragette Susan B. Anthony, 1820 to 1906. Social reformer, member of the Anti-Slavery Society, president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association. Sounds good so far, right? And their hooray is, I think the girl who is able to earn her own living and pay her own way should be as happy as anybody on earth. The sense of independence and security is very sweet. Sounds okay. Then wait, what? Mr. Douglas talks about the wrongs of the Negro, but with all the outages that he today suffers, he would not exchange his sex and take the place of Elizabeth Cady Stanton. If I remember right, she was pretty wealthy. I think most people would have traded places with her. And I'm sure she has no idea what he suffered. Then we have Anna Shaw, 1847 to 1919. Physician, Methodist minister, president of the National Women's Suffrage Association. Inspiration for an episode of 30 Rock, which I think was a TV show that aired in the 90s. Maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but I think it was in the 2000s.
Yeah, Third Rock from the Sun was in the 90s. That's what I was thinking of. That's not right.
Yeah. 30 Rock is the one with Tracy Morgan.
Okay. That tells you a lot. I don't watch TV. I remember the titles of shows that people talked about a lot when different time periods happen, but I haven't watched a lot of television shows that were made after, like, the mid-90s. In fact, I could watch Friends for the first time, the whole series for the first time. I think I've seen an episode here or there, but same with Seinfeld. I've seen a couple of episodes, familiar enough to be familiar with the characters, but I really didn't watch much TV.
Yeah, I'm the same.
Yeah. When I did, it was...
they were so popular.
Yeah.
Everybody was talking about it. I just never watched either.
Yeah, I actually know character names from shows that I never watched because people talk about them so much. Mm-hmm. But in any case, yeah, her hooray one is... there we go. Around me I saw women overworked and underpaid, doing men's work at half men's wages, not because their work was inferior, but because they were women. So that's an old line, again. And women have believed this since at least the early 20th century, if not before. They just assume that if a woman and a man they have the same job title, and they're doing the same things from the same list of tasks, that the woman's performance is on par with that of the man. Which most of the time, if there's any heaviness to the labor, that's not true. It's just not. So.
No way. If you can barely carry half the weight of what a man can, why should you get paid the same?
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thing is, like, we've talked about this before, I worked at, the gas station that I worked at was It started out as just a convenience store, and then they added pumps. Right, so it was on a corner where it was really cramped. The convenience store was really small. It was never expected to be a food service place or anything like that. And we all worked really hard to make it clean and nice so that we could sell food. But nobody worked harder than the guys. And when the truck would come in, you could see the difference. Right? If the women were carrying one box, the men were carrying two. If the women were carrying two boxes, the men were carrying three. If it was cold or rainy or too hot outside, all of the going out to the shed to put boxes in the shed, or going out to pick up boxes that were set outside from the truck, the guys did that. Right? If it had to get stocked in the cooler and there was a male and a female working, the guys did that. Because the cooler was 34 degrees, which is apparently the ideal temperature for beer. At least according to American lore. So everybody else in the world, don't kill me for that, because I know there is some beer that is supposed to be served heated. But in any case, so like there was all that, right? And then if somebody got sick in the bathroom, most of the cashiers would leave it for the assistant manager because he was a man. They would leave it for the shift leader because he was a man. Right? It's above my pay grade. And I ended up cleaning it up a lot of times because I didn't want to leave it a whole weekend until a man came in to clean it up.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. It's incredibly hard when that shit dries out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is stomach acid, that you'd be amazed what stomach acid will eat through. And what it does to the metal parts of your plumbing and stuff. It's not a good thing. Don't leave that sitting for somebody else to clean up. That's really nasty. Right? So yeah. This whole equality thing is kind of... It's in their heads. Right? Because they'll do stuff like that, but then they'll say, but we're doing the same job. Why are they getting paid more? Well, you know, when was the last time you went in and cleaned up after Picasso came and visited? So then that to me was a problematic statement, but to them was a hooray, right? So what did they think was problematic? She says, "You have put the ballot in the hands of your black men, like you own them now, I guess. Thus making them political superiors of white women. Never before in the history of the world have men made former slaves the political masters of their former mistresses." She seems upset.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just can't identify with this at all. Like, which ones fought in the war again? Was it the women or the men? Oh my god.
And I mean, just to talk about it like that, making the men their masters, what, because they got the vote before
Yeah.
you did?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So I guess they were okay with white men being their masters before.
Yeah.
Because they didn't start agitating for voting rights until like 100 years after the country was founded and formed. But yeah. Of course, there were some states that came into the Union with women already voting. So I suppose the women in the eastern states were pissed off about that too. But yeah, then we have Suffragette Belle Kearney, 1863 to 1939, orator, novelist, Mississippi state senator, because women had no power and no influence. And she says, hooray for equal work. Yes, I say hooray for equal work. Employers have a right to equal work for equal pay. Get to it, ladies. Their wait what for her is really long. The enfranchisement of women would ensure immediate and durable white supremacy, honestly attained. For upon unquestioned authority, it is stated, unquestioned authority, by the way, she didn't say who, just upon unquestioned authority. It's like saying everybody knows, right? Everybody knows. It is stated that in every southern state but one, there are more educated women than all the illiterate voters, black and white, native and foreign, combined. As you probably know, all of the women in the South who can read and write, 10 out of every 11 are white. When it comes to proportion and propriety between the races, that of the white outweighs that of the black immeasurably. That's a suffragette, people. That's your, it's about equality, people. That's a suffragette. So I don't want to hear that we've been unfair to feminists. Feminism is about equality. Because these guys were not about equality. They were about me, me, me. They were also criminals. So, alright, this one I don't have an alternate thing for. So I'm going to mess with the size of the screen here, or the size of the tab. Let's see if I can. And I'm going to have to move it because of how this works. So hang on a second here. Because it has this thing. Google does this. And I might be able to actually... There we go. So this is, again, ancient article. Suffragette using whip on doctor is knocked down. Now, if a man approached another man on the street with a bullwhip and started attempting to whip him with it, one would expect a fight would break out, right? You would expect, normally, that how men would treat each other would be that a man would fight back if he was attacked with a weapon like that, right? Most of the guys I know would. They might try to grab the whip. They might clock the other guy, try to knock him out, make him stop. They would do something. They wouldn't just stand there and take it. So this pro-equality feminist obviously would have expected that, right? So the article says, Glasgow, March 16th, rushing upon Dr. James Devon, Royal Prison Commissioner, a militant suffragette, horsewhipped him today. Okay, not a bullet, a horsewhip. But just as painful, I would imagine. As Devon was entering the Duke Street prison. As the woman applied the lashes, Dr. Devon threw up his hands for an instant to protect himself. But as the attack was continued, he did not emulate the example of, and this is a thing in the article that really caught my attention, the example of Premier, I believe that's Asquith, and others who have been attacked. So this was not a one-off, right? This was a regular behavior of suffragettes, chasing men down in the street and horsewhipping them. Like, how many guys do that? Just get mad at somebody politically and decide they're going to chase a man down in the street and horsewhip him and not expect any consequences. Let's see. Whoops. Yeah, that's one thing I hate about this is it moves fast if I'm not careful. Alright. And others who have been attacked. Devon got into the action himself. After a few cutting blows had landed, the prison commissioner knocked the woman down. Screaming protests, the suffragette was arrested and detained in a prison for a time. On being released, she declared the attack was made on Devon because of his advocacy of forcible feeding, which they were doing hunger strikes when they would get jailed for bombing things and being generally unruly in public. And then the British authorities were force feeding them. They'd had a tube put down their throat and poured a mixture of milk and some other things that would be like the early 20th century equivalent of like today's Boost and Ensure and other nutritional drinks for people that aren't eating. And of course that thwarted the, well, I'll starve myself to death and then you'll look bad. But in any case, they still looked bad for it. But so this woman decided that since this man advocated for something that she felt was unfair, she would horsewhip him in the street. So then it finishes up. London, March 16. The reign of terror instituted by militant suffragettes following the recent arrest of Miss Emmeline Pankhurst was directed toward the railroads today. Suffragettes swooped down upon the railroad yards at Kings Norton. And it continues this it doesn't actually, yeah, it has the whole thing. Okay. It wasn't on the I had a archive.is version of it, but it only gave that little square. Birmingham, and burned 6 passenger cars standing on a siding. 3 others were badly damaged. Now again, if they're for equality, did they want to be treated the same way that men are treated when men do things like that? How much you want to bet that they protested against the arrests and imprisonment that they would experience for crimes like that? With a new wave of militancy, assuming greater proportions daily, some action was expected to be taken as a result of a letter received by the Dean of Westminster from Sylvia Pankhurst, declaring that East London suffragettes will march to the Abbey next Sunday and attend the evening service. Miss Pankhurst said that she would be present and asked that special services be held, but it was feared today that the famous Burne-Jones window in Birmingham Cathedral is permanently marred as a result of the suffragette raid yesterday. The words "Votes for Women" were printed across the window. The floors, pews, and pulpit of the cathedral were disfigured by the women. And that's the end of the story. So they actually vandalized a church. So now we're looking at, not only did they attack men in the street, but they also engaged in church vandalism. And then I have another one. Let's see, that's not it. There, that's the one. Okay. Dang it. There we go. Bringing it down. I think that might be as far as I can bring it down, so now I have to bring this down. And what it says in here, Miss Pankhurst admits bomb deal. And I'm going to have to increase the size of this if it lets me. There we go. It's in order to actually be able to read it, you need to use 2 fingers to actually move it. There we go. Alright, so this is London, February 22. Miss Emmeline Pankhurst's assumption of full responsibility for the explosion at David Lloyd George's country residence, and her confession that she conspired with and incited her followers to carry out the scheme, are being seized by the authorities as grounds for hot prosecution. Already, legal steps have been taken for bringing a criminal charge against her. 6 suffragette window smashers were today sentenced to 6 months each. All pledged themselves to carry on the strike. So when they went to jail, they didn't just go to jail for protesting. Like, feminists will tell us that these women went to jail just for protesting, and then they engaged in hunger strikes and they were force-fed. No, they went to jail for busting out windows, bombing churches, vandalizing churches, attacking men in the street. At one point, they tried to kill a member of parliament by pushing him off a cliff. They were particularly violent. They were terrorists. Like today, they would be referred to as terrorists.
Well, no, today they'd be referred to as the Summer of Love.
Oh yeah, Summer of Love. That's true, because they're on the right side of history.
Can you imagine if Tommy Robinson did any of that stuff? They wouldn't even give him a trial. They'd bury him under the jail.
Oh yeah.
Everything that the people get accused of nowadays was being done, and worse, by the suffragettes 100 years ago.
Yep. The one where they tried to push a member of parliament off of a cliff really freaked me out when I read that. I was just like, they just approached this guy and tried to kill him, just right out in public. Of course, today it would be a lot more difficult, because today members of Congress and probably members of Parliament are a little more careful where they go and how open they leave themselves to attack, because people have been violent quite a while. But yeah, just imagine, you're just expecting to go someplace and do stuff, and a couple of women approach you, and of course I'm sure that he probably thought they were harmless unless he knew who they were. And then suddenly they're trying to push you off of a cliff to your death. That's crazy. Mrs. Pankhurst, I keep saying Miss. Pankhurst was her married name. Met a mixed reception at a meeting last night in Chelsea. When she appeared, she was greeted with groans, hisses, yells, and cheering, and only the presence of the police prevented a hostile section of the audience from attacking her. She declared, despite her threatened trouble, that short of taking human life, the militant suffragettes intended to do everything possible, and it wasn't short of taking human life, obviously. And intended to do everything possible to settle once and for all the political status of English women. How to deal with the militant suffragettes is a problem discussed anxiously by the public, and the newspapers are devoting many columns to it. According to the Standard, the latest plan of the militants is to kidnap the cabinet ministers. The police are shadowing ministers now. So they actually put the police in a situation where they had to pay all of their attention to cabinet ministers. The police are shadowing them. So serious thinking public men have suggested that the women who are arrested and go on hunger strikes be left to starve rather than permitted to defy or evade the laws with impunity. So they were to the point. I don't think that this actually got women the vote. I don't think this had any influence on getting women the vote. In fact, I think that if it hadn't been for men fighting in the at the time it was just called the Great War, but in World War I, and earning the right for commoners to vote, I don't think that women would have been given the right to vote in the UK, because they made themselves such a nuisance that it couldn't be rewarded by lawmakers without encouraging people to use making themselves a nuisance, and a dangerous nuisance at that, to get what they wanted from politicians. Like, that's the worst way to respond to that, is to give them what they want. And finally, I wasn't sure we would get through all these, but we are going to, because it's only 8:08, so we got time for this. We're not going to dwell on this too much. This is from I want to say the University of Yeah, Albany University. So it doesn't say who the author is, but this is about Elizabeth Cady Stanton again. Daughter of a judge, Elizabeth Cady Stanton had a keen interest in the law. In her youth, she began reading law books and enjoyed debates with her father's law students. This all sounds good so far, right? These experiences further developed her analytical mind and her rhetorical skills. Elizabeth's life was a lifelong project to define. I think this was written by a student because I wouldn't put life twice in the same sentence like that. To define and correct the problems women faced, according to historians Ellen Carroll Dubois and Richard Candida. It just blows my mind. Candida is actually the name of yeast and yeast infections. But anyway, initially she turned her attention to the legal system, which codified the subjugation of women. She understood that women and men could not change their legal status if they lacked the right to vote, and she worked hard and ultimately successfully or unsuccessfully for the cause of universal suffrage. Right? Then we get to the but, and this one has a big but. There we go. A rift in the abolitionist and suffrage movements developed over that cause. Many reformers took a pragmatic approach to suffrage, believing that male suffrage, especially for black men, should be the first priority. Which makes sense because male suffrage was already accepted, right? Even if it was only white men originally, it was still male suffrage was already accepted. So, and it was accepted on a very specific basis that we've been studying now for 2 months. So everybody should be able to tell me what that basis was. Like, anybody in the chat should be able to type it right in. And, of course, my two co-hosts will remember.
We're just leaving a pregnant pause for...
No. There will be no pregnancy here. You guys know that I'm like about to turn 53. Like I'm completely done with that. Not gonna happen. Not even pregnant pause. So at no point did women ever face conscription in the history of the United States. Right? At no point. None. Women did help out in the Revolutionary War. They did not do what the men did. They were able to contribute, and so there's no excuse for why women shouldn't face some form of conscription, because there is stuff women can do. But never have women faced conscription in the history of the United States. I don't know that the UK has ever conscripted women either. We almost did, but we didn't do it. You doubt it, huh? I kind of doubt it too, because it doesn't seem like something that the UK would do. But yeah, activities in expectation of duty. Oh, Candida is also an Italian surname meaning white. That's interesting. But yeah, military subscription, military conscription, fighting in battle to create those rights, to expand those rights, to preserve those rights. That's been the history of it. 800 years of men's military service. 800 years of obligation and duty and blood being attached to men's voting rights is the reason why men's voting rights were accepted, right? And the reason that voting rights for black men in America were being considered at the time that feminists were protesting that men were getting their rights first was because black men, fought and bled and died for their freedom during the Civil War. That's why. It wasn't because, oh gosh, they're free now, so we should just give them voting rights. It was because their service was respected. Let's see. Telemnar says he sent a super chow, but it's not showing. Are you sure it went through? I don't see it. I'm gonna go out and back into that chat and see if I see it that way. Nope, still no super chow. What the heck? Okay, Telemnar, you'll have to either send it again or message me, or just type it in the Rumble chat and I'll read it off when I see it. Right? But yeah, women did not. Now, that's not to say that there weren't any services that women did during the Civil War. There were women who worked in military hospitals. There were women who did the same things that women did during the Revolutionary War, which mostly was, if they weren't working in military hospitals, they were sewing and repairing uniforms, they were cleaning uniforms, they were cooking. They did domestic duties, right? They were not in uniform. They did not fight battles. They might have carried guns, but they didn't carry guns the way that men carried guns. And there were boys in the military during the Civil War doing the same things that boys did in the military during the Revolutionary War. So there were buglers, there were drummers, there were boys carrying flags, and they were targets. There were boys carrying messages, and they were targets. So this was again men and boys fighting, and women gaining, right? So the rift. Many reformers took a pragmatic approach to suffrage, believing that male suffrage, especially for black men, should be the first priority. Elizabeth disagreed so violently that she opposed the passage of the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution. So, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who is a celebrated and much beloved by feminists, suffragette, opposed the 15th Amendment that gave black men the right to vote, and the 14th Amendment that secures your right to due process. Equal treatment under the law. Right? That's the amendment that she opposed. So, yeah. Equality. But not if it means that black men got the right to vote before white women. In her outrage, she revealed racist and bigoted aspects of her thinking. She resented deeply the fact that the law gave black men, male immigrants, and men of the lower orders, so poor men who didn't make as much money as her husband or her father, had the right to vote, but women were expected to wait. Her rhetoric incorporated... I don't know if I am going to get in trouble for this. I'm not going to read that part out loud. It's, but her rhetoric incorporated racial slurs, and consequently she alienated many of her formerly ardent supporters, including Frederick Douglass. Elizabeth knew that the law... Okay, there it is. Elizabeth knew that the law kept black women disenfranchised as well, but she failed to form alliances with black women suffragists. Influenced by social Darwinism and nativist sentiments, she then advocated educated suffrage, which in effect would reserve the franchise for illiterate white men and women of the middle and upper classes, so poor people wouldn't have the right to vote. Elizabeth, Susan B. Anthony, and other women suffragists tried a new legal strategy they called the New Departure. They argued that by its very nature, citizenship conferred the right to vote on men and women alike. Their strategy was to bring the issue before the courts. Women would violate the law by voting illegally, be arrested, and then file suit. Anthony voted in 1872, in the 1872 election, and the following year was brought to trial. Found guilty and fined. A Missouri woman, Virginia Minor, was the plaintiff in a famous 1874 U.S. Supreme Court case, Minor versus Happersett, which set back women's suffrage for generations. Now, I think I think this was written by a student. I would say maybe decades, because generations would be a much longer time, and the 19th Amendment was ratified. It passed in 1920, so that's not generations. It's about 50 years. A little less, like 46.
Like 2 generations, right?
Yeah, 2 generations. It also had major negative consequences for newly enfranchised black men and for the civil rights of all citizens. So there we go. Now I gotta raise this up because I've hit the bottom of the page. Oops. I just locked the window I was trying to unlock. There we go. During the post-Civil War years, Elizabeth Cady Stanton increasingly turned her attention to issues that went beyond the cause of women's suffrage. By this time, she was convinced that an unjust legal system only reflected deeper and more entrenched problems. She devoted the last 20 years of her life to studying, lecturing, and writing about religion as a root cause of women's inequality in marriage and before the law. So if you wonder why the church is so gynocentric today, can look at early 20th century feminists. So what do we got here? We have feminists that were female supremacists who thought that men were an afterthought and should be eliminated. We had feminists who were white supremacists who were upset that black people got the vote before that black men got the vote before white women, and who used racial slurs and said nasty things about them. And then we have feminists who were violent, who engaged in criminal actions that they thought they shouldn't have to suffer the consequences a man would suffer for doing the same thing, and who bombed churches, who I didn't pull up the church bombing article, did I? I pulled up the vandalism article. But there was, and I actually have it linked here. I think, see, there are several of these. I have an article called Suffragettes Can't Save Feminism. And there we go. A follow-up called Suffragettes Still Can't Save Feminism that have these links. Yeah, this one was titled Expect Bombs Next, says Suffragette. You can sort of see that at the bottom here. Mary Lay, who broke Prime Minister Asquith's windows, warns the magistrate, expect bombs next. So that was the bomb threat. Then we have, if it loads up. Oh, come on. There we go. Not sure which one here. This one's from 1914. And while that's coming up, we'll look at the other one. This one's also from 1914. Militants are at it again with acid, bombs, stones, and bags of flour. Now, the significance of bags of flour is whether or not they threw them at the same time as the bombs, because flour, I learned this the hard way, flour will explode. So one day, when I was living with a friend who had a gas stove, And I grew up with an electric stove. My grandmother had a gas stove, so I used one a few times. So I thought, oh yeah, I know everything about this, right? And I was cooking something, and I was making gravy with broth from it, and I dropped the bag of flour on the floor. And it didn't break, but a poof of it went up in the air, and it was just, it spread out, like a poof does. And as soon as it spread out, one little bit of it came into contact with the flame on the oven, and I actually had a little fireball in my face. Like, it blew up. It singed my eyebrows. It was bad. And that was probably a cup, maybe, of flour, maybe less. So if they were bombing things and there was fire and then they were throwing bags of flour into it, that can create a huge fireball. And it's intimidating. It might not necessarily do a lot of damage, but it definitely would scare the shit out of people and could start fires that would be bigger than the fire that was already taking place. Right. But yeah, so this was, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they flung bags of flour and stones at counselors. And also, bags of flour are heavy. So if you get a bag of flour thrown at you, it's going to hit you like a 5-pound rock, and then or bigger, depending on how big the bags were that they threw. And then when it blows up, it gets into your nose and your mouth and everything, and it's going to make you feel like you're suffocating because you're breathing all that in. So that's really horrible. Why won't this actually show? It was showing earlier. Come on, page, load. Yeah. That's great. Let me try again. Wonder what's blocking this. Okay, now it's loading up. Okay. So then we had... Yeah. Threatening to bomb the police and the courts. This is still not the church bombing. This might be it. No, that's not it. I don't know if I opened that one or not. In any case, there was an article in which a feminist stated that her only regret was that the bomb didn't go off. Like, she tried to bomb a church, and the bomb fizzled. Maybe it was poorly made or something, but it didn't go off. And since it didn't go off, the damage that she had intended wasn't done. That would be bombing attempt, maybe. She was defiant in court when she said that. She was like, yeah, my only regret is that it didn't go off. There it is. It's in, that's why it didn't show. It's in my, my Google Docs. There we go. Come on. There we go. In the meantime, let's see. Telemnar's super chat came up. Says he gave us $20 and said, regarding your sarcasm about women having no formal power before feminism, feminists tend to believe that all societies before the U.S. in the 1960s were all traditional, which meant they were all identical with regard to the status of all women. And I'm assuming you mean Western tradition, too, such as not allowing them to hold any position of influence or own property or work or divorce, etc. Of course, this is ridiculous. 19th century France is pretty different from ancient Greece, which in turn is different from the Qin dynasty. Thanks for telling me how to pronounce it. However, they will also happily not believe this was the moment it makes women look powerful, citing examples of female rulers or business owners, etc. It is ridiculous that they do not see that their dismissal of all societies prior to the Anglosphere in the 1960s as traditional is like a religious fundamentalist categorizing every culture other than his own as heathen and therefore both inferior and interchangeable with all others. You know, the other thing that gets me about that is feminists take credit for all of the things that they consider advancements for women throughout history, right? Oh, by the way, I just wanted you guys to know, Google has this flagged as abuse. This news article flagged as abuse, just so you know. But yeah, they women had no power and no influence, and yet women deserve credit for all of those changes that took place. That's cognitive dissonance right there. NobaFan21 gave us $1 and said, I remember being told most women didn't support Gloria Steinem despite today's result. I'm wondering if history is repeating itself. Yes. Yes, history is repeating itself. This was never a majority thing. There were never a majority of women. Now, why won't it come up? Alright. I know where the article is. It's down here, I believe. Yeah, right there. Women's only regret. Okay. The focus on this sucks, but we'll try to. And we're not going to try to read the whole thing. There we go. It's much better. Okay. Woman's only regret was over her failure. London, July 13. I don't want to copy it. When Annie Bell, the militant suffragette, was arraigned today for trying yesterday to destroy Archdeacon Wilberforce's famous old Church of St. John Evangelist, Westminster, with a bomb, she said, the only thing I regret is that, honestly, that beastly thing didn't go off. The prisoner expressed intense pride in her act. She congratulated the woman worshipper who detected her setting fire to the fuse attached to a can of gunpowder. Oh God, that would have been an absolute disaster. And said her smartness was worthy of a better cause. She advised her to become a militant suffragette. I meant the bomb to go off and blow up the church right enough, said Miss Bell. The prisoner then stretched herself at full length on the seat in the prisoner's enclosure and asked the woman warden to give her a pillow and wake her when the case had concluded. Bye-bye, you paid bully, was Miss Bell's farewell to the magistrate when he remanded her. So she was a bitch about it.
Yeah, that's a lot of fucking smart mouthing for somebody who's so oppressed.
Yep. I partly love having this article just because, like, this is our history. This is what feminists are made of, right? This is the suffragettes at their finest. She bombed a church. She castigated a woman for disagreeing with her. She mouthed off to the court. She was not just bitchy about it, but cocky about it. And fully admitted, her criminality. She didn't really have any fear of the consequences at all. She had, nothing to lose, as Fur Waifu says. So, yeah, Boss Beach. And that is the history that people don't like to talk about. That's Google deemed having this article abuse. I can't say that enough. Actually, my mind was blown by that. When I saw the red flag on it last night, and I left that comment on it. I mean, it's my Google Drive that's on. And I've appealed because, and I don't even know how the hell it got flagged, because the only people who can see it are me and another honey badger that can see what's in this folder. And neither one of us would have flagged it. So I think this was algorithm flagged. But yeah, I can't see where the evidence is that we have misrepresented feminists here. Do you guys see any evidence that we misrepresented feminists last week?
No. I did not. Definitely don't. Mike has stepped outside, though.
Okay. Well, if our critic wants to contact me again and explain exactly what parts of this didn't really happen, I would be very interested to know.
Please do. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, because from my perspective here, we kind of covered the bases. So I don't know. I think. Oh, what do you think, Lauren?
No, I was just agreeing with you.
These women were nasty. Like the whole idea of the nasty woman. Everybody always thinks that's was invented by modern feminists with the Trump campaign and their Trump derangement syndrome and everything. These women were worse.
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine what these women would do if they encountered a group of intersectional equity feminists today?
Oh my God, they'd rip their heads off.
Yeah, they'd beat the shit out of them. They wouldn't just be horsewhipping men in the street. Can you imagine the language? Jeez, Pete. Imagine them running into the intersectional equity feminist LGBTQ activists. The ones that are supporting, all of the gender ideology, the gender transitioning ideology, and all of that in schools, and erasing the gender line between sports and so on.
God, I think their heads would explode.
I think that heads would roll.
Yeah, because look what's happening. Like, men are now becoming women. The very thing that you wanted to separate yourself from, they're now becoming you. They're taking over your space.
Yeah, I wonder how
Men
much.
are becoming women.
I wonder how much they would disagree with it. I wonder how much they would be like, well, this is the only thing that men can do now.
Yeah, they might enjoy the idea of the genital mutilation.
Yeah. They might enjoy the idea of this being the way that the male sex gets erased.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that ideology came out of radical feminism after all.
Yeah.
So, but with that, I think we have pretty much wiped the floor with that allegation. Like, we did not misrepresent feminism. We read a feminist's writing, and we have read the behavior of several other feminists. So, yeah, I don't expect to hear back again, but I will be interested to see if I am contacted again, because the scathing, you have misrepresented feminists, and you don't deserve your voting rights, and I did post a meme on Twitter quite a bit recently. That's an almost 2-minute video explaining why women shouldn't vote. But
Great.
have you seen it?
Yeah.
Yes,
so.
yes, you were.
I think we watched it right before the show one of these weeks.
Yeah, or I think I did an after show before I published it, showing what it was, what I was going to put up. But in any case, yeah. So there we go. So thanks you guys for everybody's saying you're really quiet. It's not looking really quiet in my, like, I've even got her turned up. That's weird.
It's really echoey in here. I don't know. Kind of spacious. That's probably why.
There are several settings on this Yeti. I should really experiment.
Oh yeah, that can be kind of a pain in the ass. It's not where you're supposed to keep your Yeti either, but and that would definitely make it stink in the morning. But yeah, the audio mixer, well, it's not automatic, but the audio mixer in OBS, it looks like their sound is as loud as mine, and it's hard to tell because it's going first through, mine is going through my headset directly to OBS. Theirs is coming through the desktop, which means it's coming through Discord, and then I'm hearing it in my headphones, and I'm seeing visually how it plays through OBS, and OBS makes it look like the volume is the same for all of us. So it's kind of hard for me to adjust if one is louder than the other, because I can't hear a difference and I can't see a difference. So that it kind of sucks, because like I can only judge. I know that when the representation of the sound wave gets out of the green and into the yellow, it's kind of getting close to clipping, and when it gets to red, it is clipping. So I try to avoid getting into the red. Mine's been in the yellow the whole time, so it's almost but not quite clipping. And theirs has been like at the top of the green and into the yellow the whole time. And I don't know another way that I'm tech savvy enough to use properly to do this. So and I don't have the practice at this point to do something more complicated. So I don't know. I'll do my best with it, but unfortunately the show might have this problem for a while if OBS isn't regulating the sound. So sorry guys, till I figure out why it doesn't look the same as it sounds. I don't know what to do about it. So, but in any case, thanks for bearing with us. If the sound has been that difficult to listen to, it seems like everybody has remained and continued to listen anyway. And thanks to my two co-hosts for going through all. Some of that was really nasty stuff to go through too, wasn't it? And thanks to everybody who works in the background to make HBR Talk happen. And good night, all.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
And we will see you next Thursday. Actually, we will see you next Tuesday, because Tuesday is the day that I'm going to be doing the show. We're switching because my daughter, the candy scientist, that's her title, has a grand opening for a business that she's working with, and I'm going to be out of state on Thursday. So there I get to brag. And with that, good night all. See you next Tuesday.